You know, folks, if there's been any benefit, any upside in having a tyrannical nut job as a president right now, it's been the incredible resurgence of states' rights and of Republican governors across the country saying, well, that's not going to work here in my state. We've seen this happen across the nation on the vaccination mandates. We've seen it happen repeatedly in Florida with Governor Ron DeSantis. You have real champions who are standing up there and saying, you know, we're just not going to enforce that garbage here in our state. And folks, that concept, the idea of state sovereignty, is exactly what undergirds the Second Amendment Preservation Act, or SAPA law, that IGO is going to be pushing in a major way in the upcoming session in Des Moines. I want to talk about that for a moment because a lot of gun guys think that because Joe Biden has not yet been able to pass a major gun control bill through Congress that we're in the clear. Well, there's two things about that. Number one, we're hanging on by a thread right now, frankly, when it comes to national background checks and the national red flag gun seizure law. And folks, God forbid there is a shooting somewhere, a mass shooting somewhere. You're going to see Republicans betray us, I'm afraid, very quickly, especially on red flag gun seizure laws. So we're only stopping Joe Biden right now in Congress by a thread. But more than that, we can't stop Joe Biden from issuing executive orders, and he's done that when it comes to gun control. The two of them that are the most important to us as gun owners are very close to taking effect. The first one would make it a crime to own a pistol brace. And you guys know these are the very popular items out there. They help people stabilize handguns and shoot them more safely and more accurately. So why does Joe Biden want to get rid of them? Well, he's an aging tyrant. Who knows what goes on in that man's mushy brain. The other item, though, perhaps is even more impactful to gun owners. It makes it a felony for any gun owner in the country to own an unregistered 80% lower homemade firearm. Now, the 80% lowers have become wildly popular in the last 10 years across the state and across the country. It allows a gun owner to take an 80%, thus the name 80% lower, an 80% completed lower receiver, drill out the rest of it, and make your own homemade firearm. This works for handguns. This works for rifles. It works for all kinds of things. There's dozens, maybe even over 100 now, different types of 80% lowers that you can make into a homemade firearm. Joe Biden hates it because as a homemade firearm, there's no need for a serial number. And the one thing this president wants above everything else, this aging tyrant, is a list of every gun and every gun owner. So these two executive orders have already been drafted. They've been up for review on the ATF website for a long time. We've had you leave comments there, and they may be taking effect as early as February of 2022. And so while we have stopped his agenda so far in Congress, these executive orders are taking impact here in Iowa very quickly. That's why we need the Second Amendment Preservation Act, or SAPA for short. If you're not sure what SAPA means or what it is, it's kind of simple. It's very, very huge in its implications, but it's kind of simple. It just says that here in Iowa cops, it's troopers, deputies, city cops, Iowa cops are going to enforce Iowa laws when it comes to firearms, ammo, and accessories. Iowa law. After all, Iowans live here, and Iowans pay the salaries that go towards these agencies. And so we as Iowans want our law enforcement community to enforce Iowa law. It's kind of simple, but what that means, however, is big, because that also means they could not then enforce federal laws when it comes to firearms, ammunition, and accessories. And not just federal law, federal executive orders as well. You see, the truth is that federal laws and orders are almost always enforced by local authorities. The White House knows this. Joe Biden, even in his mushy brain, even on a bad day, which is every day for Creepy Joe, even Joe knows that he can pass all the federal laws and EOs he wants, but if the local agencies, state and local, won't enforce it, it doesn't mean anything. That's what the left did to President Trump. Remember, for 4 years, he tried to deport violent, illegal aliens who were facing rape and murder charges, and left-leaning cities and left-leaning states said, oh, no, come here. We'll give you protection. We'll protect you. And they refused to enforce federal laws they disagreed with, right? It worked really good for New York, for California, for all these cities, for Chicago. They could have, for Oregon, they could all have their cake and eat it too, they thought, when President Trump was in the White House. Well, by God, now it's our turn. And that's what SAPA law would do. It would say, we're not going to enforce it. We're simply not going to enforce it. And here's the awesome thing. This is no longer a question of can we do this. The left did it, like I said, for 4 years under President Trump. The marijuana laws are a separate example of how the state said, nah, we're not going to enforce that here. But now, folks, we have this in real time happening in our neighboring state of Missouri. The Missouri Firearms Coalition, a group I'm very proud to work for as well, we passed SAPA in Jeff City last session, earlier this year. And what we've seen now in Missouri over the last 4 or 5 months is this massive decoupling between state and local agencies, because SAPA law says you cannot enforce federal laws when it comes to guns, ammunition, and accessories. And that's what we want. We want our state agencies enforcing state laws. Now, the left is going insane in Missouri. There was a huge hit piece on 60 Minutes last week. We are not surprised by that. The fake news media hates it. The DOJ hates it. Everyone on the left hates it because they know that if more and more states realize that they have the right to say, no, we're just not going to enforce that crap here, that will destroy their remaining gun control agenda via executive orders. But not just that. If the states realize they can stop enforcing federal tyranny when it comes to guns, what else might they do that for? See, this is a major issue to help save our country from Joe Biden's tyrannical intentions. And so what makes SAPA in Missouri, and the same thing as in our bill draft here in Iowa, incredibly powerful, and why the whole federal government's trying to repeal Missouri's SAPA law, is that unlike any other state in the nation, Missouri has teeth built into SAPA law. You see, many of you have heard about sanctuary counties or sanctuary state resolutions. Nebraska, for example, this year passed a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. Many counties here in Iowa, or a couple of them anyway, have passed sanctuary resolutions at the county level. And those things are good, and they're well-meaning, and they're a statement of legislative intent on the part of county supervisors, or in Nebraska's case, the governor. But that's the thing. They're just that, a statement of legislative intent. They're not law. What makes SAPA law powerful in Missouri, and what makes our SAPA law bill draft powerful here in Iowa, is that it has teeth in it. So in Missouri right now, if the St. Louis mayor, who's rabidly anti-gun, says, I disagree with SAPA, I don't care what SAPA says, and by gosh, we're going to enforce federal executive orders on gun control. If they go and do that in Missouri right now, they are going to be taken into civil court by the individual gun owner in question, and they can be fined $50,000 per violation. That is why the left is freaking out, because they know that with teeth in SAPA law, there's nothing these left-leaning mayors and these left-leaning cities can do. I think it's pretty safe to say that here in Iowa, the vast majority of Iowa's police officers, troopers, and deputies individually are very pro-gun. I mean, heck, almost every time in the Capitol, I have a trooper show me his own personal firearms collection on his phone, show me photographs, thumbing through his phone of the recent gun he purchased. You and I both know that individually, Iowa cops are very pro-gun. But as a lobby presence, that's not the case at all. Law enforcement as a lobby entity opposed shall issue for, forever. They opposed constitutional carry for the whole 13 years we fought to pass it. They opposed stand your ground law. We had Dana Wingert from the Des Moines PD in the Capitol trying to stop the bill. You had John Sarcone, the county attorney in Polk County, in the Capitol trying to stop stand your ground law in committee. So as a lobby entity, the law enforcement community has not been friendly to gun owners at all. And so we know that without teeth in this law, They will simply ignore SAPA and enforce federal gun control anyway. That's why our SAPA bill is different. And folks, they've tried to repeal it in court in Missouri. They've been struck down. We've been fighting them in court in Missouri. It's going to the state Supreme Court next spring. We have a very favorable outcome in mind, we believe, there, because the Supreme Court has always said the states have the right to decide how to spend their law enforcement budget. The states have the right to decide what's in the best interest of their own citizens. The states have the right to tell an out-of-control federal government, we're not going to enforce your BS here in our state. Again, the left did it to President Trump on immigration. Dozens of states have done it on the left and the right when it comes to the issue of marijuana. It's not a question of if we can do it. The only question now is, will our legislature get it done in 2022? We have legislative sponsors lined up in both chambers, and this bill is going to be ready to go in prime time when session begins. But it's going to be a fight. It's just going to be a fight. There's no question about it. It took 13 years to pass constitutional carry here in Iowa. It took 6 years to pass stand your ground law. And it took at least years and years to pass shall issue way back in 2010. Folks, we don't have years here. We have weeks, months perhaps, until Biden's executive orders take effect. Months. Until your 80% lower that many of you already have in your home would make you a felon unless it was registered with the government. Months until an AR-15 or any kind of a pistol brace would become an automatic felony charge from the federal government. We don't have time to dally around for years to pass SAPA here in Iowa. So, as you see your state reps and state senators over the holidays or at the county GOP functions or at church or at Hy-Vee or at Casey's getting gas, wherever you see these guys, pull them aside and say, I appreciate what you did on constitutional carry in 2021, but that should have been done a long time ago, frankly. And so we're happy you did that. But the real thing that we need now, the issue of the day today, is the Second Amendment Preservation Act, and we need you to co-sponsor and vote for that bill. So when you see them in person, tell them that. Number 2, sign our petition right away. So if you don't see them, we can communicate on your behalf for you via your signed petition. And number 3, if you haven't yet renewed your membership in Iowa Gun Owners for 2022, we need you to get on board with this fight. The fight's coming. We spent heavily to pass constitutional carry, and we need to recapitalize and be ready to go on SAPA next session. We can do this. The Iowa legislature has made a shocking pivot to conservative values, to freedom in general over the last 18 months. That's what happens when you have a heavy-handed government for the last 11 months in particular in the White House trying to run every single facet of our lives. This is a good thing when it comes to Iowa, and it's a good thing for freedom, but we can't stop until we have SAPA law on the books. Guys, this is a really important issue. It's not just going to benefit gun rights. It affects every issue, and it saves our red states from Biden's tyranny. Help us pass it here in Iowa. Share our video, sign our petition, renew your support today, and we'll keep you informed. Thanks.